The moon hung swollen and crimson in the midnight sky, casting shadows that writhed like living things across the forest floor. In a forgotten clearing, where ancient stones marked boundaries between the mortal world and something darker, Danica Ashcliffe felt the ropes bite into her wrists, felt the cold earth press against her knees, felt her sister's breath hot with jealousy against her neck. The mark on Danica's collarbone burned. It had been burning for days now, a silver crescent that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat, glowing faintly beneath her pale skin like a trapped star. She had tried to hide it, wrapping scarves around her throat, pulling her white hair forward to cascade over her shoulders. But Zara had seen. Zara always saw the things that should have been hers. "Please," Danica whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind that had begun to howl through the trees. The red dress she wore, the one their mother had given her before she died, was torn at the hem, stained with mud and moss. "Zara, please don't do this." Zara's fingers trembled as she drew the circle around her bound sister, sprinkling herbs that smelled of decay and forgotten magic. Her face, so like Danica's yet twisted with bitterness, was illuminated by the candles she had placed at each cardinal point. They flickered and danced, casting shadows that made her features seem monstrous. "Don't speak his name," Zara hissed, her voice cracking with barely contained fury. "You don't deserve to even think of him. Lucas Wolfspire, the Alpha King. He was supposed to be mine. I've waited, I've prepared, I've made myself perfect for him. And then you, with your innocent eyes and your pathetic weakness, you bear his mark." The mark flared brighter, and Danica gasped, arching against the ropes. It felt as though someone had pressed a brand directly to her soul. She could feel him somewhere in the darkness, could feel his presence like a storm gathering on the horizon. She didn't know his face, had never spoken to him, but the bond sang in her blood, ancient and undeniable. "It wasn't my choice," Danica pleaded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I never asked for this. If I could give it to you, I would. Please, Zara. We're sisters." "We stopped being sisters the moment fate chose you over me," Zara spat. She pulled a dagger from her belt, the blade black as obsidian, etched with runes that seemed to move in the candlelight. This was forbidden magic, the kind that could tear souls apart, that could unmake the bonds the moon goddess herself had woven. "I'll cut it out of you if I have to. And when I'm done, when your mark is nothing but ash and memory, I'll go to him. I'll make him love me." She raised the blade, began chanting words in a language older than the kingdom itself. The air grew thick, oppressive, as though the world was holding its breath. The mark on Danica's collarbone began to burn with such intensity that she screamed, the sound raw and primal, echoing through the forest like a warning bell. And in that moment, miles away in the obsidian tower of his castle, Lucas Wolfspire felt his entire world ignite. He had been in his war room, surrounded by maps and reports, his long black hair tied back from his face, his jaw set in that expression his advisors had learned meant someone was about to face his wrath. At 32, Lucas commanded not just respect, but fear. He was tall enough that most men had to crane their necks to meet his eyes, broad-shouldered and scarred from countless battles, his presence alone enough to make warriors twice his age step back. His beard was neatly trimmed, his dark eyes sharp as broken glass. When he walked into a room, silence followed. But now those eyes widened, his hand flying to his chest, to the mark that mirrored his mate's, hidden beneath his black tunic. It felt as though someone had reached into his ribcage and set his heart aflame. Pain lanced through him, sharp and terrifying, and with it came something worse. The overwhelming sense that she was in danger, that his mate, the one the moon had chosen for him, was crying out in the darkness. "My lord." One of his captains stepped forward, concern etching lines into his weathered face. "Are you—" "Before we begin the story, I want to thank everyone who supports the channel and loves our Alpha King romances. In the pinned comment, you'll find a special selection of the best Amazon books that inspire our stories. If you purchase any book through those links, you'll be directly supporting the channel and helping us create more stories. Tell us where you're watching from and how old you are in the comments. I hope you enjoy the story. Lucas didn't wait to explain. He was already moving, his massive frame carrying him toward the stables with a speed that seemed impossible for someone his size. His commanders scrambled to follow, shouting orders, calling for horses and weapons. They had seen their king face down armies without flinching, had watched him tear through enemy lines with nothing but his bare hands and his wolf's fury. But they had never seen fear in his eyes before. "Bring my horse," Lucas commanded, his voice a growl that made the stable hands jump. "Now." They brought him Thunder, a white stallion as fierce and untamed as his master, the only creature in the kingdom besides Lucas himself that no one else dared approach. Lucas swung onto the horse's back without saddle or bridle, his fingers tangling in the animal's mane, and the bond between them, forged through years of battle and bloodshed, needed no words. "With me," he barked to his guards. And then they were riding, tearing through the night like vengeance given form. The mark on his chest burned brighter with every stride, pulling him forward like a compass pointing toward true north. He could feel her terror, could taste her tears on the wind. The beast within him, the wolf he kept chained beneath his skin, was howling for release, demanding that he shift, that he run faster, that he tear apart whoever dared touch what was his. But he held on to his human form, held on to his control, because he would need his hands for what was coming. He would need his strength to keep from killing whoever had made his mate scream. The forest rushed past in a blur of shadow and silver moonlight. His guards struggled to keep pace, their horses lathering with effort, but Lucas didn't slow. He couldn't. The bond was screaming now, a siren song of pain and desperation that made his vision blur red at the edges. And then he saw the clearing, saw the candlelight flickering between the trees, saw the circle drawn in the earth. Saw her. She was on her knees, bound and trembling, her white hair wild around her face, that red dress stark as blood against her pale skin. And standing over her, blade raised, face twisted with hatred, was another woman who looked enough like his mate to be family. Lucas didn't remember dismounting. One moment he was on Thunder's back. The next he was across the clearing, moving faster than any human had a right to move, his hand closing around the woman's wrist with enough force to make bones creak. The blade fell from her fingers, and Lucas caught it with his other hand, hurling it into the darkness where it could harm no one. "Step away from her," he said, his voice low and deadly calm, the kind of calm that preceded storms and slaughter. "Step away from my mate, or I will end you where you stand." Zara's face went white, then red, her mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. She tried to pull free, but Lucas's grip was iron, unyielding. He could snap her wrist without effort, could reach up and tear out her throat before she could draw breath to scream. The wolf in him wanted to, was demanding it, howling for blood and retribution. But then he heard a voice, soft as a prayer, breaking through the rage. "Lucas." He turned, and the world stopped. She was looking at him with eyes the color of winter skies, and even in the candlelight, even with tears streaking her face and fear evident in every line of her body, she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The mark on her collarbone glowed silver white, pulsing in rhythm with his own, and the bond between them snapped into place like a key turning in a lock that had been waiting centuries to open. "Guards," Lucas commanded, not taking his eyes from Danica's face. His men had arrived, surrounding the clearing with weapons drawn. "Take this woman into custody. She is charged with the use of forbidden magic within the kingdom's borders, and with attempted harm against the Alpha King's mate. She will be held in the tower dungeons until her trial." "No!" Zara shrieked, struggling as two guards seized her arms. "You don't understand. She's nothing. I'm the one who's worthy. I'm the one who—" "Silence!" Lucas growled, and the word crackled with such power that Zara's voice died in her throat. He finally looked at her then, and whatever she saw in his eyes made her shrink back. "You raised a blade against my mate. You worked dark magic to sever a bond blessed by the moon herself. If you speak another word, I will forget that she shares your blood, and I will show you exactly what happens to those who threaten what is mine." The guards dragged Zara away, her protests fading into the night. Lucas waited until he could no longer hear her voice before he moved, crossing to where Danica remained kneeling, still bound, still trembling. He lowered himself to the ground before her, bringing himself to her level, and with careful, gentle hands that had ended lives and torn down kingdoms, he began working at the knots. "I'm going to untie you now," he said softly, his voice completely different from the one he had used moments before. It was warm, careful, the voice of a man who understood fear and wanted only to ease it. "I won't hurt you. I swear it on my name, on my crown, on every star in the sky. I'm here to take you home." Danica's breath hitched as the ropes fell away, as feeling returned to her wrists in painful tingles. She wanted to move, to stand, to run, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. She had spent 18 years in her sister's shadow, had learned to make herself small and quiet and invisible. And now this man, this king, this fierce and terrifying creature of legend, was kneeling before her like she was something precious. "I'm sorry," she whispered, not knowing what else to say. "I'm sorry she tried to hurt me. I'm sorry you had to come. I'm sorry." "Don't," Lucas interrupted gently. His hands moved from the ropes to cup her face, his thumbs brushing away her tears with a tenderness that seemed impossible from someone so large, so dangerous. "Don't apologize for existing. Don't apologize for being chosen. The bond doesn't make mistakes, Danica. The moon goddess doesn't err." "You know my name," she breathed, surprise flickering through her fear. "I've known your name since the moment the mark appeared on my chest 5 years ago," Lucas admitted. The bond had given him that much, had whispered her name in his dreams, had made him wait and search and hope for this moment. "I've been looking for you. I've sent scouts to every corner of the kingdom, searched every village, every town. And tonight, when I felt your pain, when I felt your fear, I thought I might lose you before I ever found you." His hands were still cradling her face, and Danica found herself leaning into that touch, despite everything she had been taught about powerful men and their cruelty. But there was no cruelty in his eyes now, only concern, only relief, only something that looked almost like wonder. "I felt you too," she admitted quietly. "Even before tonight, sometimes in dreams, sometimes when I was alone, and the world felt too heavy, like someone was calling to me from far away." Lucas's expression softened further, something breaking open in his chest. "The bond," he murmured. "It's been calling us together. And now that we're here, now that I'm touching you, I don't think I can ever let go." He said it like a confession, like an apology, giving her the choice he knew his position and his nature would soon take away. Because he was the Alpha King, and she bore his mark, and by the laws of their people, she was already his in every way that mattered. But he wanted more than laws. He wanted her willing him back. Danica looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. His face was hard angles and sharp edges, the face of a warrior who had seen too much violence, too much death. His black hair had come loose from its tie, falling around his shoulders like a dark curtain. His beard was shot through with a few strands of silver at the temples. There were scars on his hands, on his arms where his sleeves had been rolled back. He looked like he could break the world in half with those hands. But he was holding her, like she was made of glass and moonlight. "I don't know how to be a queen," she whispered, the fear finally finding words. "I don't know how to be anything but what I've always been, small and quiet and forgettable." "Then we'll learn together," Lucas said simply. because I don't know how to be anything but what I am either, fierce and feared and alone. But with you, maybe I can be something else. Maybe I can be the man who makes you smile instead of the king who makes others cower." He stood then, effortlessly lifting her with him, and Danica found herself cradled against his chest like a child, like something infinitely precious. She could feel the heat of him through her torn dress, could hear the steady thunder of his heartbeat beneath her ear. The mark on her collarbone had stopped burning, settling into a warm, pleasant glow that seemed to sing with contentment. "Will you come with me?" Lucas asked, carrying her toward where Thunder waited, toward his guards who stood at respectful distance. "Will you come home?" Danica thought of her sister's hatred, of the cottage where she had spent 18 years trying to be invisible, of all the nights she had stared at the moon, and wondered if anyone would ever see her as more than a shadow. And she thought of this man, this king, who had ridden through the night to save her, who held her like she mattered, who looked at her like she was worth every star in the sky. "Yes," she breathed. "I'll come home." Lucas's expression transformed, a smile breaking across his face like sunrise after an endless night. It changed everything about him, made him look younger, almost boyish despite the scars and the silver in his hair. He carried her to Thunder, mounted with her still in his arms, and wrapped his cloak around her shoulders to ward off the night's chill. "Hold on to me," he murmured against her hair, and she did, wrapping her arms around his waist and pressing her face to his chest as they rode. The journey back to the castle passed in a blur of sensation. The rhythm of the horse beneath them, the warmth of Lucas's body, the gentle way he kept one arm wrapped around her, even as he guided Thunder with his other hand. He spoke to her in that soft voice, telling her about the castle, about the rooms he had prepared, about how long he had waited for this moment. The forest gradually gave way to cultivated lands, fields sleeping under the moonlight, small villages where light still burned in windows despite the late hour. People emerged from their homes as they heard the thunder of hooves, and when they recognized their king, they bowed low. But their eyes were curious, drawn to the white-haired girl cradled so carefully in his arms. "They're looking at me," Danica whispered, pressing closer to Lucas's chest, seeking shelter from all those watching eyes. "Let them look," Lucas murmured against her hair. "Let them see their future Luna. Let them see the woman who brought their king home after 5 years of searching. You have nothing to fear from them, Danica. They will love you as I do, given time." "How can you be so sure?" "Because you have a gift for seeing people, truly seeing them. You'll listen to their troubles, care about their lives, show them compassion where I can only offer justice. They need someone like you. I need someone like you." As they approached the castle, Danica's breath caught in her throat. She had heard tales of the Alpha King's fortress, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of it. The castle rose from the mountainside like something carved by giants, all black stone and silver towers, banners bearing the wolf's head sigil snapping in the night wind. Torches blazed along the walls and guards stood at attention, their armor gleaming like captured starlight. "I thought I would be alone forever," Lucas admitted, as they crossed into the castle grounds, the massive gates opening before them with a groan of ancient metal. "I thought the moon had given me a mate I would never find, a bond I would never complete. And I grew harder with every passing year, colder. My people respect me, but they fear me too. I've forgotten how to be anything but the weapon they need me to be." "Then maybe we'll teach each other," Danica said quietly, echoing his earlier words. "Maybe we'll learn how to be more than what the world has made us." The courtyard was alive with activity despite the hour. Servants rushed to meet them, stable hands reaching for Thunder's reins, guards forming protective ranks. But Lucas waved them all back with a single gesture, dismounting with Danica still secure in his arms. He set her down carefully, keeping one arm around her waist as her legs wobbled beneath her. "This is Danica Ashcliffe," Lucas announced, his voice carrying across the courtyard, commanding attention and respect in equal measure. She is my mate, chosen by the moon goddess herself. She will be treated with the same reverence and protection you show me. Anyone who disrespects her, who fails to serve her as they serve me, will answer to me personally. Is that understood?" A chorus of, "Yes, my lord," echoed back, and Danica felt her cheeks burn at being the center of so much attention. But Lucas squeezed her waist gently, grounding her, reminding her she wasn't alone in this. "Come," he said softly, guiding her toward the main entrance. "Let me show you your new home." The castle was lit up like a festival, word having clearly spread of their king's return. Servants rushed to meet them, eyes wide with curiosity and shock at the sight of the white-haired girl in Lucas's arms. But Lucas ignored them all, carrying Danica through corridors that seemed to stretch on forever, past tapestries depicting ancient battles and great hunts, past suits of armor that stood like silent sentinels, past windows that looked out over a kingdom sleeping under starlight. "How do you not get lost?" Danica asked, trying to memorize the turns they took, the landmarks they passed. Everything was so grand, so overwhelming, so utterly different from the tiny cottage she had shared with Zara. "I grew up here," Lucas said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "These halls are as familiar to me as breathing, but I'll teach you, show you every secret passage and hidden room. You'll know this castle as well as I do, I promise." They climbed a spiral staircase that seemed to go up forever, Lucas's footsteps never faltering despite her weight in his arms. When they finally reached a landing, he paused before a set of double doors, carved with intricate wolf designs, the wood dark and polished to a mirror shine. "I had these rooms prepared years ago," Lucas admitted, his voice softer now, almost vulnerable. "When the mark first appeared and I knew you existed somewhere, I kept hoping that one day I would bring you here, that these doors would finally serve their purpose. There were nights when I would stand here and imagine what you might look like, how you might smile, what your voice might sound like, and none of my imaginings came close to the reality of you." He pushed open the doors with his shoulder, and Danica gasped. The bedroom was enormous, dominated by a fireplace already burning, the flames casting dancing light across stone walls and rich carpets in deep crimsons and golds. A massive bed was piled with furs and silks, looking soft enough to sink into forever. The furniture was all dark wood and elegant lines, each piece clearly crafted by master artisans. Bookshelves lined one wall, already filled with volumes Lucas had collected, thinking of the mate he had yet to meet. Through an archway, Danica could see a bathing room with a tub large enough to swim in, steam already rising from heated water someone had prepared. But what caught her attention most were the windows. Tall and arched, they looked out over the kingdom, and through them, Danica could see the moon hanging full and bright, the same moon that had witnessed her near death and her salvation. "These are your rooms," Lucas said, setting her down carefully on the edge of the bed. The mattress was impossibly soft, the furs warm against her bare feet. He knelt before her again, and she realized it was a habit with him. This kneeling, this making himself smaller so she wouldn't have to crane her neck to meet his eyes. "I'm right next door, through that connecting door. But I'll only enter if you invite me. This space is yours, Danica. Your sanctuary. No one comes here without your permission. Not the servants, not the guards. Not even me unless you want me here." Danica looked at him, at this powerful king kneeling at her feet, and felt something crack open in her chest. He could have demanded anything of her. By the laws of their people, she was his the moment the mark appeared. But instead he was giving her choice, giving her power, giving her control over her own life in a way she had never had before. "Will you stay?" she asked, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "Just for a while? I don't want to be alone." Relief flashed across Lucas's face, so profound it was almost painful to witness. "I'll stay as long as you want me." He moved to the chair by the fire, clearly intending to keep his distance, but Danica caught his hand. Her fingers looked impossibly small wrapped around his, her skin pale as snow against his sun-bronzed darkness. Not there, she said quietly, surprising herself with her boldness. Here. With me. Lucas froze, and for a moment she saw uncertainty flicker across his features. This man who commanded armies, who had never backed down from a fight, looked almost afraid of this small act of intimacy. I don't want to frighten you, he said roughly. I don't want to take advantage of tonight of your fear of... You're my mate, Danica interrupted, the word feeling strange and right on her tongue. The bond chose us, and I've spent 18 years being afraid of everything. I don't want to be afraid of you too. So Lucas climbed onto the bed beside her, careful to stay above the covers while she was beneath them, and let her curl against his side like a bird seeking shelter from a storm. His arm came around her shoulders, heavy and warm, and Danica felt safer than she had in her entire life. A servant knocked softly, bringing a nightgown of soft cotton and silk, along with warm milk and honey cakes. Lucas thanked her with surprising gentleness, and the woman retreated with a knowing smile. He helped Danica change behind a dressing screen, his back turned to give her privacy, his presence comforting even when he couldn't see her. When she emerged in the nightgown, her white hair loose around her shoulders, Lucas's breath caught visibly. Beautiful, he murmured, the word reverent as a prayer. You're so beautiful it hurts to look at you sometimes. They settled back into the bed, and Lucas encouraged her to eat, to drink, to restore some of the strength the night had stolen. And as she did, they talked, their voices soft in the firelight. They talked through the night, their voices soft in the firelight. Lucas told her about his childhood, about losing his parents young, about being thrust into kingship at 16 and having to learn how to be ruthless to survive. About the loneliness that came with power, the isolation that came with fear, about the day the mark had appeared on his chest, and how it had been both a blessing and a curse, knowing his mate existed somewhere but not being able to find her. Danica told him about growing up in Zara's shadow, about their mother's death 5 years ago and how it had changed everything, about the mark appearing on her 18th birthday and Zara's immediate consuming jealousy, about learning to make herself invisible because visibility meant danger. You'll never have to be invisible again, Lucas promised, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her shoulder through the fabric of the nightgown a servant had brought. I see you, Danica. The bond sees you. And I will spend every day of my life making sure you know you're seen, you're valued, you're cherished. She fell asleep like that, safe in the circle of his arms, the mark on her collarbone glowing softly in time with his heartbeat. And Lucas stayed awake, watching her sleep, marveling at the miracle of her, this small, fragile creature who had somehow been chosen to be his. The wolf in him purred with contentment, finally at peace after years of restless searching. Dawn was breaking when he finally allowed himself to close his eyes, his face buried in her white hair, breathing in her scent of snow and wild roses. The next days passed in a blur of wonder and adjustment. Lucas had duties that called him away, kingdom business that couldn't be ignored, but he made time for Danica in ways that shocked his advisors. He took breakfast with her every morning, taught her about the castle and its workings, introduced her to his most trusted people. He was patient with her silences, gentle with her fears, and utterly devoted in a way that made even his hardened warriors smile. In public, he was still the Alpha King, still fierce and commanding and terrifying to those who opposed him. But the moment he was alone with Danica, his entire demeanor shifted. He would cup her face and ask about her day, would listen to her stumbling attempts to understand pack politics with genuine interest, would hold her hand as they walked through the gardens he had planted years ago in a moment of uncharacteristic softness. You're different with me, Danica observed one evening as they sat by the fire in her room, his head in her lap as she tentatively ran her fingers through his long black hair. Everyone else sees the king. I see you. Because you're the only one who gets to, Lucas murmured, his eyes closed in contentment. This simple touch, her hands in his hair, brought him more peace than any victory on the battlefield ever had. The world needs the king, but you, my mate, you get the man beneath the crown, the one who's afraid of losing you, who's terrified of not being enough, who wants nothing more than to make you happy. You make me happy, Danica said quietly, the truth of it surprising her. She had expected to be overwhelmed, to feel lost in this new life. But Lucas made everything feel possible, feel manageable. When the weight of her new position pressed down on her, he was there to share the burden. When she stumbled over protocol or custom, he was there to catch her and whisper that it didn't matter, that she was perfect exactly as she was. He taught her to be less afraid, and she taught him to be less alone. It was a slow dance, this falling toward each other, but every day brought them closer. Every day, the bond between them grew stronger, until Danica couldn't imagine a life without his presence, without his steady warmth and unexpected gentleness. But in the dungeons beneath the castle, Zara festered with rage and plans for revenge. It was 10 days after that terrible night in the forest when Danica's conscience began to trouble her. She would lie awake beside Lucas, his arm heavy across her waist, and think of her sister chained in the darkness below. Despite everything Zara had done, despite the blade and the forbidden magic and the hatred in her eyes, Danica couldn't forget the years before their mother's death, when Zara had been different, when she had been the older sister who braided Danica's hair and told her stories and protected her from the world's cruelties. "You're thinking too loud," Lucas murmured one night, his voice rough with sleep. They had fallen into an easy intimacy over the past week, sleeping in the same bed, though nothing physical beyond cuddling and gentle kisses had passed between them. Lucas was determined to give her time, to let her come to him fully when she was ready, and Danica loved him for it, even as she grew more impatient with her own hesitation. "I'm sorry," she whispered, turning in his arms to face him. The moonlight streaming through the windows painted silver highlights in his dark hair, caught on the sharp angles of his face. Even in sleep, even relaxed, he looked like something carved from stone and shadow, beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. "I didn't mean to wake you." "I was already half awake," Lucas said, his hand coming up to cup her cheek, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw with a touch so gentle it made her shiver. "Couldn't stop thinking about how lucky I am to have you here, to have you safe, to have you mine." "Lucas," Danica began, then hesitated, biting her lip. "Can I ask you something? And will you promise not to be angry?" His expression grew serious, his eyes searching hers in the darkness. "I could never be angry with you, little mate. Ask me anything." "It's about Zara," Danica said quietly, and felt him tense immediately, the hand on her face going still. "I know what she did. I know she deserves to be punished. But she's been in the dungeons for 10 days now, and I keep thinking about her down there in the dark. And I can't help but remember when we were children, before our mother died, when she was kind to me, when she was my sister." Lucas was silent for a long moment, his jaw working as he clearly fought to control his response. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully measured. "You want me to release her?" "I know it's asking too much," Danica rushed on, her words tumbling over each other in her haste to explain. "I know she tried to hurt me. I know she would have killed me if you hadn't come. But she's still my sister, Lucas. She's still family. And maybe if we show her mercy, if we give her a chance, she could change. She could remember who she used to be." Lucas sat up, running a hand through his hair in frustration. For a moment, Danica saw the king in him, the man who had executed traitors and crushed rebellions without hesitation. His back was rigid, his shoulders tense, and she could practically feel the war raging inside him. "She raised a blade against you," he said, his voice low and strained. "She worked forbidden magic to try to sever our bond. In any other circumstance, for any other crime, she would have been executed the next morning. The only reason she still lives is because she shares your blood, and I knew that killing her would hurt you." "I know," Danica whispered, reaching out to touch his back, feeling the muscles jump beneath her palm. "And I'm grateful. I'm so grateful that you didn't hurt her for my sake. But Lucas, keeping her locked away isn't much better. She's going to rot down there, and every day she stays, the guilt eats at me a little more. Please, I'm begging you. Let her go." Lucas turned back to her, and the anguish in his eyes nearly broke her heart. "If I let her go and she hurts you, if she tries again and I'm not there to stop her, I will never forgive myself. Danica, you're asking me to put your compassion above your safety, and that's the one thing I can't do. I won't do." "Then exile her," Danica suggested desperately. "Send her far away where she can't reach me. Give her money and supplies and a chance at a new life. Please, Lucas, I need this. I need to know that I tried, that I didn't just let my sister rot because she made a mistake." "A mistake," Lucas repeated incredulously. "She tried to murder you. That's not a mistake, Danica. That's a choice. A deliberate, calculated choice." "Then let me believe she can make a different choice now," Danica pleaded, taking his face in her hands the way he so often did with her. "Let me believe that people can change, that mercy matters, that love is stronger than hate. Because if I can't believe that, Lucas, then what hope do any of us have?" He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch, and she could see the moment he broke, the moment her words found their way past his defenses. "You're going to be the death of me," he muttered. But there was no heat in it, only resignation and a kind of awed affection. "Your compassion, your kindness, your absolute refusal to let go of hope even when the world has given you every reason to. It's going to make me soft, little mate. It's going to make me weak." "It's going to make you better," Danica corrected gently. "It's going to make you the king you were always meant to be. Not just feared, but loved. Not just respected, but admired. Please, Lucas, trust me on this." He opened his eyes, and the look he gave her was so full of love and exasperation and helpless devotion that Danica felt her breath catch. "I trust you with everything I am," he said quietly, "even when I don't trust your judgment. Even when every instinct I have is screaming at me to keep you safe at all costs. If this is what you need, if this is what will give you peace, then I'll do it." Relief flooded through Danica so powerfully that she threw her arms around him, burying her face in his neck. "Thank you," she whispered against his skin. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Lucas held her tight, his face in her hair, breathing in her scent like he was trying to memorize it. "But she's not staying in the kingdom," he said firmly. "I'll have her brought up tomorrow. Give her supplies and an escort to the border. She'll be exiled, Danica. She can never return, never contact you, never set foot in our territory again. And if she violates that exile, if she comes anywhere near you, I will not hesitate to end her. Is that understood?" "Yes," Danica agreed, pulling back to look at him. "That's more than fair. That's more than she deserves." "It's more than I want to give," Lucas admitted roughly. "But I would give you the world if you asked for it. I would tear down the sky and reshape the stars. What's one sister's exile compared to that?" The next morning, Lucas made the arrangements with clear reluctance, his displeasure evident in every sharp order he gave to his guards. He had Zara brought up from the dungeons, cleaned and clothed, given supplies and a horse. But he insisted on being present when she was released, on making absolutely certain she understood the terms of her exile. Danica stood beside him in the throne room, wearing the silver gown he had commissioned for her, the mark on her collarbone visible above the neckline. She wanted Zara to see it, to see that the bond was still there, still strong, that all her efforts had been for nothing. When the guards brought Zara in, Danica barely recognized her. Her sister had always been beautiful, had always carried herself with confidence and pride. But 10 days in the dungeons had broken something in her. Her hair hung lank around her face, her eyes were sunken and hollow, her skin pale as parchment. She looked like a ghost, like something already halfway to death. "Zara," Danica said softly, stepping forward despite Lucas's warning hand on her arm. "Are you all right?" Zara looked up, and for a moment, Danica saw her sister in those eyes, saw pain and regret, and something that might have been shame. "Danica," she whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I did. I was mad with jealousy, crazy with wanting what I thought should be mine. But down there in the dark, I had time to think, time to see how wrong I was, how twisted I had become." "I forgive you," Danica said immediately, and felt Lucas tense beside her. "You're my sister. I will always love you, no matter what you've done. And I've convinced the king to show you mercy." "Mercy," Zara repeated, her gaze sliding to Lucas with something unreadable in her eyes. "What kind of mercy?" "Exile," Lucas said coldly, his voice the one he used in court, the one that reminded everyone he was king, and his word was law. "You will leave this kingdom today, and never return. You will be given supplies, money, and an escort to the border. But if you ever set foot in our territory again, if you ever try to contact Danica or harm her in any way, I will hunt you down myself and end you. This is the only mercy you will receive from me, and you have it only because my mate has a far kinder heart than you deserve." Zara lowered her eyes, her shoulders shaking with what looked like sobs. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving me a second chance. I don't deserve it. I know I don't. But I swear I'll use it. I'll become someone better, someone worthy of your forgiveness." Danica moved forward, pulling away from Lucas despite his attempt to hold her back, and embraced her sister. Zara was stiff in her arms at first, then seemed to collapse, clinging to Danica like a drowning woman clutching at driftwood. "I love you," Danica whispered. "I always have. And I hope you find peace, Zara. I hope you find happiness somewhere far from here." "I love you too, little sister," Zara murmured. And Danica felt tears spring to her eyes at the use of the old endearment, the one Zara hadn't used since before their mother died. But what Danica didn't see, what Lucas saw with his predator's instincts and his king's suspicious nature, was the flash of pure hatred in Zara's eyes as she looked at him over Danica's shoulder, saw the way her fingers twitched, as though reaching for a weapon that wasn't there, saw the promise of violence in the set of her jaw. He said nothing, did nothing, because Danica needed this. But he made a mental note to have his most trusted spies follow Zara to the border and beyond, to make sure she truly left and truly stayed gone. The embrace broke, and Zara was led away by the guards, her head bowed, her steps shuffling. Danica watched her go with tears streaming down her face, and Lucas gathered her into his arms, holding her as she cried. "You did the right thing," he murmured, even though he wasn't entirely sure he believed it. "You showed her mercy. You gave her a chance. That's all anyone can ask." "I hope so," Danica whispered. "I hope I didn't just make a terrible mistake." For several weeks, peace reigned. Danica settled into her role as Lucas's mate, learning the intricacies of pack politics and kingdom management with a quick intelligence that surprised even her. Lucas was a patient teacher, delighting in her questions, proud of her insights. The bond between them deepened with every passing day, moving beyond mere physical attraction into something profound and unshakable. He showed her his kingdom, took her riding through forests and valleys, taught her to see the beauty in the wild places he loved. And in turn, she softened him, made him laugh more, made him remember that there was more to life than duty and war. His advisors noticed the change, commented on how their king seemed lighter somehow, how his smiles came easier, how his justice was tempered now with wisdom rather than just strength. At night, they lay tangled together in the bed they now shared fully, the bond between them complete in every way. Lucas was gentle with her the first time, reverent, treating her like something precious, even as the beast in him howled for more. And Danica met him with a passion that surprised them both, this quiet girl who had learned to hide herself, revealing a fire that burned as bright as his own. "I love you," Lucas whispered against her skin one night, his voice rough with emotion. "I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anything. You've given me a reason to be more than just a weapon, more than just a king. You've given me a future I actually want to live." "I love you too," Danica murmured, her fingers tracing the mark on his chest, the mirror of her own. "You saved me, Lucas. Not just that night in the forest, but every day since. You've made me believe I'm worth saving." But their happiness was not destined to last unchallenged, because Zara, for all her tears and promises, had not changed. She had simply learned to hide her hatred better. She had gone to the border as ordered, had crossed into the neighboring kingdom with the escort Lucas provided. But she hadn't gone far. Instead, she had sought out a witch, an old woman who lived in the mountains and practiced magic that made the forbidden spells Zara had attempted look like children's games. She had offered everything she had, promised everything she might one day possess. For one thing: revenge. The witch had laughed at her desperation, but had agreed. For the right price, she would craft something special, something that would slip past even the Alpha King's considerable defenses. A poison that mimicked a natural illness, that would kill slowly enough to be untraceable back to its source. All Zara needed was an opportunity to administer it. And so she waited, patient as a spider, for her chance. It came 3 weeks after her exile, during a festival celebrating the autumn harvest. The castle was open to the public, the gates thrown wide to allow the people to celebrate with their king. There were performers and merchants, food and drink, music and dancing. It was chaos in the best possible way, a joyful pandemonium that made even Lucas relax his guard. Zara slipped in with a group of traveling merchants, her face hidden beneath a hooded cloak, a scarf wrapped around her features. She moved through the crowds like smoke, watching, waiting for her moment. And when she saw Danica standing on a balcony overlooking the festivities, laughing at something Lucas had whispered in her ear, the hatred nearly choked her. That should have been her standing there. That should have been her laughing with the most powerful man in the kingdom, wearing silks and jewels, bearing the mark of the Alpha King. Instead, she was hiding like a criminal, reduced to poison and stealth because direct confrontation had failed. She waited until Lucas was called away to handle some minor crisis, until Danica was left alone, with only a single handmaiden for company. Then she made her move, approaching with the deference of a servant, her head bowed, a tray of delicacies in her hands. "My lady," she said, pitching her voice lower, rougher, disguising the tones her sister would recognize. "His Majesty sent these for you. He says he'll return shortly." Danica turned, smiling, and reached for one of the pastries on the tray. Zara held her breath, watching, waiting for her sister to take that first bite, to seal her fate. The poison would act slowly, making Danica sick over the course of weeks, wasting away until not even the bond or Lucas's desperate love could save her. But before Danica could bring the pastry to her lips, before Zara's plan could succeed, a hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. Lucas materialized behind her like a nightmare made flesh, his face twisted with fury, his eyes blazing with a rage so profound it seemed to shake the air around them. "Did you really think I wouldn't know you?" he snarled, ripping the tray from her hands and hurling it over the balcony railing. "Did you really think I wouldn't smell your scent? Wouldn't recognize the taint of poison magic? Wouldn't sense your murderous intent the moment you entered my castle?" Zara tried to run, but Lucas was faster, his hand closing around her throat and lifting her off her feet. The hood fell back, the scarf slipped away, and Danica gasped, recognition and betrayal warring in her eyes. "Zara," she whispered. "No. You promised. You said you would change." "Change?" Zara spat, even with Lucas's hand around her throat, even knowing she was seconds away from death. "Why should I change? You stole everything from me. My future, my mate, my destiny. You deserve to die, Danica. You deserve to suffer the way I've suffered." Lucas's fingers tightened, and Zara made a choking sound, her feet kicking uselessly in the air. The beast in him was howling for blood, demanding he crush her windpipe, end this threat once and for all. But he looked at Danica, saw the tears streaming down her face, saw the heartbreak in her eyes, and knew he couldn't do it. Couldn't kill her sister while she watched, no matter how much Zara deserved it. "Guards!" he roared, and they came running, weapons drawn. "Take this traitor to the main courtyard. Summon the pack. She will face judgment before all witnesses." They dragged Zara away, her curses echoing through the halls, and Lucas turned to Danica, gathering her into his arms as she broke down completely. "I'm sorry," she sobbed against his chest. "I'm so sorry. You were right. You said she would try again, and I didn't listen. I put you in danger. I put myself in danger. I'm so sorry." "Shh," Lucas murmured, holding her tight, one hand stroking her white hair. "You did nothing wrong. You showed compassion. You gave her a chance. It's not your fault she chose to waste it, that she chose hatred over redemption. That's on her, Danica. Not you. Never you." But even as he comforted her, even as he pressed kisses to her hair and whispered promises that everything would be all right, rage burned in his gut. Zara had tried twice now to harm his mate. There would not be a third time. This time, mercy was not an option. The courtyard was packed with people when Lucas led Danica down an hour later. The entire pack had assembled, along with what seemed like half the kingdom. Word had spread quickly about the attempted assassination, about the traitor who had violated her exile to try to murder the Alpha King's mate. The air was thick with tension and anger, the crowd's energy crackling like lightning before a storm. Danica wore a gown of deep blue, the color of midnight, with the mark on her collarbone deliberately visible. Lucas had insisted on it, wanting everyone to see the proof of their bond, the undeniable claim the moon goddess had placed on her. His hand was firm around hers, grounding her, lending her strength as they descended the steps toward the assembled crowd. Zara stood in chains in the center of the courtyard, flanked by guards whose hands rested on their sword hilts. Her face was a mask of defiance, but Danica could see the fear lurking beneath it, the wild desperation in her eyes. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of her crimes and the judgment of so many watching eyes. The crowd parted for Lucas and Danica, people bowing low as they passed. Danica could feel their eyes on her, assessing, judging, wondering if she was strong enough to be their Luna. She lifted her chin, channeling every lesson in dignity her mother had ever taught her, and walked beside Lucas as though she had been born to this role. When they reached the raised platform where Lucas would pronounce judgment, he turned to face the crowd. His presence commanded instant silence, his authority absolute and unquestionable. This was the Alpha King in his element, fierce and powerful, and utterly in control. "My people," Lucas began, his voice carrying across the courtyard like thunder. "Today we gather to witness justice, to see that even those who share blood with the Luna, even those who once walked freely among us, are not above our laws." He gestured to Zara, and 2 guards stepped forward, forcing her to her knees. She struggled briefly, then subsided, her jaw clenched tight enough that Danica could see the muscles jumping beneath her skin. This woman, Zara Ashcliffe, has committed crimes against the crown, against the kingdom, and against the sacred bond blessed by the moon goddess herself. She attempted to sever a fated bond through forbidden magic. She violated her exile to return with poison and murder in her heart. She sought to end the life of my mate, your Luna, out of nothing more than jealousy and spite. The crowd rumbled with anger, voices raised in condemnation. Someone shouted for blood, for execution, for the ultimate punishment. Others joined in, their fury building like a wave. Lucas raised his hand, and silence fell instantly. "I understand your anger," he said, his voice gentler now, but no less powerful. "I share it. Every instinct I possess demands her blood, demands retribution for what she tried to take from me. But I am not just a wolf driven by instinct. I am your king, and I must serve justice, not just vengeance." He looked at Danica then, and she saw the conflict in his eyes, the war between the man who wanted mercy and the king who understood that mercy could sometimes be weakness. When she saw Danica, something ugly twisted in her expression, jealousy and hatred rising to the surface like poison. "Don't look at me like that," she sneered, her voice cracking with barely suppressed rage. "Like you're the victim here. You took everything from me, and all I wanted was to take it back. To claim what should have been mine from the beginning. The mark, the king, the crown. It was supposed to be me. Me. It was never you," Lucas said coldly, and the certainty in his voice made Zara flinch. "The bond doesn't make mistakes, Zara. The moon goddess chose Danica because she was meant for me, because she possesses qualities you lack and could never understand. Compassion, kindness, the ability to see beyond yourself. You were never a consideration, never a possibility, and your jealousy has destroyed what little you had." Zara's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks, but they were tears of rage rather than remorse. "I hate you," she spat at Danica. "I hate you more than I've ever hated anything. You ruined my life just by existing." Lucas stepped forward, his voice carrying across the courtyard, cold and implacable as winter. "Zara Ashcliffe, you stand accused of attempting to murder the Alpha King's mate through poison. You stand accused of violating your exile and entering the kingdom under false pretenses. You stand accused of working forbidden magic and conspiring with dark practitioners. How do you answer these charges?" "Guilty," Zara spat, lifting her chin in defiance. "Guilty and proud of it. I would do it again if given the chance. I would do anything to see her dead and take her place at your side." A ripple of shock and anger moved through the crowd. Even those who might have felt some sympathy for a jealous sister's pain recoiled from such blatant, unrepentant malice. Lucas's expression didn't change, but Danica felt his hand tighten around hers, felt the tremor of barely controlled rage running through him. "Then by the laws of this kingdom, and by my authority as Alpha King, I pronounce sentence. Zara Ashcliffe, you are hereby banished from this kingdom for all eternity. You will be marked with the sigil of exile, so that any who see you will know you are forbidden from returning. You will be escorted to the border and released into the wilderness beyond. And if you ever set foot in our territory again, if you ever attempt to contact or harm Danica in any way, your life is forfeit. You will be hunted and killed on sight. This is my judgment, and it is final." "Banishment?" Zara laughed bitterly. "That's your punishment? After everything I've done, you're just going to send me away?" "Death would be too merciful," Lucas said coldly. "You would become a martyr, a tragic figure. But banishment means you live with your failures. You live knowing that Danica is here, happy and loved and cherished, while you wander alone in exile. You live knowing that you destroyed everything you could have been for the sake of jealousy that ate you alive. That is a far crueler punishment than a quick death." He turned to his guards. "Mark her and take her to the northern border. Make sure she understands that there is no third chance, no more mercy. If we see her again, she dies." The guards moved forward with the brand, and Zara's screams echoed across the courtyard as they pressed the sigil of exile into her shoulder. It was an old magic, one that would prevent her from entering pack territory without triggering every ward and warning Lucas had in place. She would never be able to sneak back in, never be able to threaten Danica again. When it was done, when Zara had been dragged away, still cursing and weeping, Lucas turned to Danica. She was pale as snow, trembling like a leaf in a storm, but there was something resolved in her eyes now, something that hadn't been there before. "It's over," he said quietly, cupping her face in his hands. "She can't hurt you anymore. She can't hurt us. We're safe, little mate. We're finally safe." "I'm sorry I didn't listen to you," Danica whispered. "I'm sorry I let my compassion blind me to the danger. You warned me, and I didn't listen." "Your compassion is not a flaw," Lucas said firmly. "It's one of the things I love most about you. Don't let what happened make you hard, Danica. Don't let it make you less than you are. The world needs people like you, people who believe in second chances, who see the best in others. Just maybe, next time, listen when I tell you someone is a threat." She laughed shakily, leaning into his touch. "I promise. From now on, I'll trust your instincts as much as my own." "Good," Lucas murmured, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Because I can't lose you, Danica. I won't survive it. You're the only thing in this world that matters to me, the only thing that makes any of this worth it." The months that followed were the happiest of Danica's life. With Zara truly gone, with the threat finally removed, she was able to relax into her role as Luna, as Lucas's mate, and the kingdom's queen in all but name. She threw herself into helping the people, using her gentle nature and compassionate heart to soften the hard edges of Lucas's rule. Where he was feared, she was loved. Where he was fierce, she was kind. Together, they balanced each other perfectly, two halves of a whole that made the kingdom stronger than it had ever been. Lucas continued to be a study in contrasts. In public, during court sessions or military councils, he was every inch the Alpha King, commanding and powerful and occasionally terrifying. But the moment they were alone, he transformed into someone else entirely. He would gather Danica into his arms and bury his face in her hair, breathing her in like she was the air he needed to survive. He would trace the mark on her collarbone with reverent fingers, murmuring about how lucky he was, how impossible it seemed that the moon had given him someone so perfect. "Sometimes I'm afraid I'm going to wake up and find this was all a dream," he admitted one night, as they lay tangled together in the darkness, her head on his chest, his fingers playing with the white strands of her hair. "That you'll vanish like smoke, and I'll be alone again." "I'm real," Danica assured him, pressing a kiss to the mark on his chest. "And I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me, Lucas Wolfspire, for the rest of our lives. Forever," Lucas corrected, his arms tightening around her. "The bond doesn't end with death, little mate. Our souls will find each other in every life, in every world. Forever isn't long enough for how much I love you." As winter approached, bringing with it frost-kissed mornings and nights that smelled of pine smoke and snow, Danica discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, noticing the subtle changes in her body, the way certain smells made her nauseous, the exhaustion that seemed to settle into her bones. But it was the pack healer, a wise old woman named Mira, who had served 3 generations of Alpha Kings, who confirmed what Danica already knew in her heart. "You're with child, my lady," Mira said gently, her weathered hands warm on Danica's belly. "About 6 weeks along, if I'm reading the signs correctly. A strong heartbeat already. This child is blessed by the moon, as all bond-born children are." Danica's eyes filled with tears, overwhelmed by the magnitude of it. A baby. Their baby. The physical manifestation of the bond that had saved them both. She pressed her hands over Mira's, feeling for what the healer could sense, trying to imagine the tiny life growing inside her. "Does the king know?" Mira asked, her expression knowing. "Because if he doesn't, you should tell him soon." That man has been waiting his entire life for you, and now you're giving him a child. He deserves to know his world is about to get even better. Danica told him that evening, when they were alone in their chambers. She had planned something elaborate, some clever way to reveal the news. But when Lucas came in from a long day of council meetings, his face lined with exhaustion, she couldn't wait. "I'm pregnant," she blurted out, the words escaping before she could stop them. "We're going to have a baby." Lucas froze in the doorway, his coat still in his hands, his expression completely blank. For a horrible moment, Danica thought he was unhappy, thought maybe she had misread everything, thought maybe he didn't want this. But then his face crumpled, and he crossed the room in 3 long strides, gathering her into his arms and burying his face in her hair. "Say it again," he commanded, his voice rough with emotion. "Please, Danica, say it again." "I'm pregnant," she repeated, laughing and crying at the same time, her arms wrapping around his neck. "We're going to have a baby, Lucas, in about 7.5 months. He pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands, his dark eyes swimming with unshed tears. "A baby," he whispered, his thumbs stroking her cheeks with infinite gentleness. "Our baby. A child born from this bond, from this love. Danica, you've given me everything. A mate, a home, a future. And now a child. How did I get so lucky?" The news sent Lucas into a flurry of protective overreaction that would have been amusing if it wasn't so endearing. He immediately summoned Mira back to the castle, insisting she stay in the guest quarters so she would be close if Danica needed anything. He had the stairs leading to their chambers carpeted to prevent slipping. He banned certain foods from the kitchen because he had heard they might be harmful to pregnant women. He started following Danica around the castle like a massive, overprotective shadow, earning amused looks from servants and exasperated sighs from his advisors. "I'm pregnant, not made of glass." Danica laughed one day when he tried to carry her up the stairs, because he thought she looked tired. She had only walked from the library to the dining hall, barely 50 feet. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time, Lucas. I'm going to be fine." "Other women weren't carrying my child," Lucas growled, but he set her down, keeping one hand on her waist as though afraid she might topple over at any moment. His fingers splayed possessively across her still flat stomach, and Danica could feel the wonder in his touch, the reverence. "Other women aren't the most precious thing in my world. Let me be overprotective, Danica. It's all I know how to do." She softened, reaching up to cup his bearded cheek, feeling the scratch of it against her palm. "I know, and I love you for it. But you have to trust that I can take care of myself too, that I'm stronger than I look." "You're the strongest person I know," Lucas said seriously, turning his head to press a kiss to her palm. "You survived your sister's hatred, survived that night in the forest, survived stepping into a role most people spend their whole lives preparing for. But that doesn't mean I can stop worrying about you. It doesn't mean I can turn off the part of me that needs to keep you safe, that needs to protect you and our child from anything that might hurt you." His vulnerability in that moment, the raw honesty of his fear, made Danica's heart ache. She pulled him down for a kiss, pouring all her love and reassurance into it, trying to make him understand that she wasn't going anywhere, that they were in this together. "Then we'll find a balance," she murmured against his lips. "You protect us, and I'll let you. But I also need to live, Lucas. I need to walk and breathe and be more than just a precious thing to be locked away. Can you give me that?" He rested his forehead against hers, breathing in her scent, grounding himself in her presence. "I'll try," he promised. "It won't be easy, and I'll probably fail more often than I succeed. But I'll try for you. Because you're right. You're not made of glass, even though sometimes I wish you were. Because then I could see every threat coming and know exactly how to protect you." As the pregnancy progressed, Their love deepened in ways Danica hadn't thought possible. Lucas was there for every moment, his hand on her belly feeling their child kick, his face filled with wonder and awe. He talked to the baby, told it stories about the kingdom it would inherit, promised it that it would be loved and cherished and protected always. And Danica watched him transform from the lonely, isolated king he had been into a man who had everything he'd ever wanted. A mate, a child on the way, a future full of hope instead of just duty. She had given him that, her compassion and love breaking through walls he'd spent decades building. On a clear winter night, when the moon was full and bright, hanging like a silver coin in a velvet sky, Lucas took Danica up to the highest tower of the castle. She was 6 months along now, her belly round and full with their child, moving constantly beneath her skin. Lucas loved to feel those movements, would spend hours with his hands on her stomach, talking to their baby, telling it stories about the kingdom it would inherit. The tower was one of Danica's favorite places. It rose above everything else, offering a view that stretched for miles in every direction. Tonight, Lucas had it prepared with furs and cushions, candles protected from the wind by glass lanterns, and a brazier burning with sweet-smelling wood to ward off the cold. They stood on the balcony overlooking the kingdom, his arms wrapped around her from behind, his hands splayed across her swollen belly. The baby kicked against his palm, and Lucas laughed, the sound full of wonder and joy. "Do you remember the first night I brought you here?" he asked softly, his lips brushing her ear, his breath warm against her skin. "You were so scared, so uncertain. You didn't know if you could trust me, if you could survive in this world. You looked at me like I might devour you." "I remember," Danica said, leaning back against his chest, feeling the solid strength of him, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. She could feel the bond humming between them, stronger now than it had ever been, a connection so deep it felt woven into the fabric of their souls. "I remember thinking you were the most terrifying and most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. All that power, all that danger, and yet you knelt for me. You made yourself small so I wouldn't be afraid." "I would have knelt forever if that's what you needed," Lucas murmured, one hand moving up to cup her face, tilting her head back so he could see her eyes. The moonlight painted her white hair silver, made her skin glow like pearls, caught in the depths of her winter sky eyes. She was even more beautiful now than she had been that first night, heavy with his child, marked by his love, transformed from the frightened girl into a confident queen. "I didn't know if I was going to be your mate or your prisoner," Danica continued, her hand covering his where it rested on her belly, their fingers intertwining. "I thought maybe you had saved me just to lock me away, to keep me as some kind of trophy or possession." "And now?" Lucas asked, his voice rough with emotion, with the weight of everything they had survived and built together. "Now I know I'm your everything," Danica said simply, turning in his arms to face him. The movement was awkward with her pregnant belly, but Lucas steadied her, his hands sure and gentle on her hips. "Just like you're mine. We saved each other, Lucas. You saved me from my sister's hatred and from a life of fear and invisibility. And I saved you from your loneliness, from being nothing but a weapon, from forgetting that you're a man who deserves love and softness and joy." Lucas cupped her face in his hands, his dark eyes gleaming with emotion in the moonlight. She could see everything in those eyes: love, devotion, wonder, gratitude, and a fierce protectiveness that would never fade. "I would do it all again," he said, his voice fervent as a vow. "Every moment of loneliness, every year of searching, every battle and loss and heartbreak. I would endure it all again, 1,000 times over, for the privilege of standing here with you, for the privilege of knowing that you're mine and I'm yours, of having this future with you, of giving our child a life filled with love instead of isolation." He kissed her then, deep and slow and full of promises, and the marks on their skin blazed with silver light, the bond singing between them with perfect harmony. Around them, the night seemed to hold its breath, the wind stilling, the stars burning brighter, as though the universe itself was blessing this moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Danica rested her forehead against his chest, listening to the thunder of his heartbeat. "I never thought I could be this happy," she whispered. "I never thought I deserved this much love, this much light. You gave me a life I didn't even know I wanted." "You gave me a life worth living," Lucas countered, his arms tightening around her, mindful of their child between them. "You taught me how to be more than just the Alpha King. You showed me that strength and gentleness can exist in the same person. That power doesn't have to mean cruelty, that I could be feared by my enemies and loved by my people. You made me whole, Danica." They stayed there for hours, wrapped in furs and each other, watching the moon track across the sky. Lucas told her about his dreams for their child, about the world he wanted to build for them. He spoke of peace and prosperity, of a kingdom where people were valued not for their strength, but for their compassion, where bonds like theirs were celebrated and protected. Danica shared her own dreams, quieter but no less profound. She wanted their child to know both sides of their legacy, Lucas's strength and her gentleness, his fierce protection, and her open heart. She wanted them to grow up knowing they were loved unconditionally, knowing they could be whoever they wanted to be without fear of judgment or rejection. "Boy or girl, it doesn't matter," Lucas murmured, his hand moving in slow circles on her belly, feeling their child shift and settle. "I will love them beyond measure. I will teach them to be strong but kind, to be brave but wise, to lead with both head and heart. They will be the best of both of us." "They already are," Danica said softly, her own hand joining his. "I can feel it. This child is blessed by the moon, born from a bond that defied death and darkness. They will be extraordinary." They had been chosen by the moon, fated by destiny, but they had chosen each other too. Had fought for this love, had protected it, had nurtured it into something unbreakable. In the forest beyond the kingdom's borders, Zara felt that surge of bond magic and screamed her rage into the empty darkness. But her curses fell on deaf ears, her hatred burning only herself. Because Danica and Lucas had won. Love had won. And no amount of jealousy or dark magic could change that. Years would pass, and their story would become legend. The Alpha King who had been fierce as winter until he found his gentle mate. The girl with snow-white hair who had taught a warrior how to love. Their children would grow strong and wise, learning from their father's strength and their mother's compassion. The kingdom would prosper under their rule, blessed by a bond that had overcome every obstacle fate had thrown at them. But that night, standing on the tower balcony with the moon blessing them from above, they didn't think about the future or the past. They simply held each other, two souls who had found their way home, and let the bond between them sing its eternal song of completion, of joy, of love that would last beyond the ending of all things. The mark on Danica's collarbone glowed softly in the moonlight, matching the one on Lucas's chest, two halves of a perfect whole. And if you had asked either of them in that moment what they were thinking, they would have said the same thing, that the moon goddess had given them the greatest gift imaginable, and they would spend the rest of their lives being worthy of it. The jealous sister who had tried to destroy them was forgotten, faded into nothing but a cautionary tale, because in the end, hatred could never defeat love, darkness could never overcome light, and a bond forged by destiny and strengthened by choice was unbreakable, eternal, and infinitely more powerful than any curse or spell. This was their happily ever after, hard-won and precious, and nothing in this world or any other could take it away. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this beautiful love story. Let us know what you thought of this tale full of emotions and surprises. Tell us your name, where you're watching from, and rate this story from 0 to 10 if it touched your heart. And if you enjoyed the plot, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the amazing new stories coming soon. See you next time.